This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank Lotierzo, former fighter, part-time writer, full-time observer, joined by co-host Jack Hirsch, former 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. Jack, how are you tonight?
Hey, good, Frank. A lot of news in the boxing world. I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, I wonder what everybody's talking about. You think it has something to do with a couple of heavyweights?
It does, but I'm not as excited. I'm a skeptic. You always accuse me of being a skeptic, and time's going to tell whether I'm right in this one. Of course, we're talking about Fury and Usyk, the fight for the end of April. Usyk surprised everyone by accepting Fury's offer. I wouldn't have accepted it. A 70-30 split in Fury's favor? I mean, come on. I mean, Fury was giving Usyk the type of offer that he felt he definitely turned down. And Usyk stunned Fury by accepting it. He said,
I love that move.
70-30. So if you think Fury is going to have any mental edge on Usyk at any point up to the fight, forget about it. Fury can't get inside this guy's head. If this guy was willing to take 30%, and my feeling is Usyk has been training for this fight all along at least the last couple of months. He's been training hard. He is ready to go right now. And Fury really hasn't been training hard. And now Fury has 6 weeks to get ready. My prediction on the fight is this. Fury's going to find a way to get out of the fight, to delay it. Eventually, they will fight. Fury knows he's going to have to step to the table, and he's going to want to step to the table at some point. But he's going to pull out of this fight. Fury's not going through with this fight, Frank. It's not taking place, by the end of April. Forget about it.
Jack, number one, I agree with you. I don't think they're going to fight on the 29th of April. Number two, I like Usyk's move of taking the 30% for the reasons you just said. That kind of put it back in Fury's court. However, I agree. I don't think he can get into Usyk's head. I really don't. It's like Ali and Frazier. I don't think Ali ever really got in Frazier's head except he made him mad. But the problem is Fury knows he can call the shots. And I think he is doing all of this just to try to mess with Usyk. The people that think he's afraid of Usyk, I just don't see that at all. I think it's all gamesmanship. It's the biggest fight for both of them. But at the end of the day, the Mayweather effect is in play, and the guy that is the A side and the draw is calling the shots. And I think by Usyk jumping in and agreeing to the 70-30 shows he's more desperate for the fight. But as you said, Usyk has been training. I'm never confident about what kind of shape Fury is in, but I doubt they fight on the 29th.
You know what's interesting, too? We talk about the fight that would have been the biggest fight in boxing, and we wanted badly to see Terence Crawford and Errol Spence. And I'm not criticizing Terence Crawford for this because I wouldn't take 30%. But can you imagine if he said to Errol Spence, if Errol Spence said 70-30 split in my favor and Crawford just said, done, let's make the fight. I mean, sometimes a fighter steps forward. He wants to fight so bad. He figures, let me take this fight. I'll win. I'll dictate terms later on. It's not so much about the money. And the money I'm going to be getting is going to be good anyway. But I'll go ahead. Lennox Lewis actually did that with Riddick Bowe. Lennox Lewis was willing to accept anything. I mean, Ken Norton was offered $200,000 to fight Leon Spinks by Bob Arum. At that time, the going rate would have been about 600,000 for Norton. That would have been a fair amount. So Bob Arum thought that Ken Norton would have turned the offer down. And then he could say, well, we offered him that and he didn't take it. So, so we moved on. Ken Norton said, I accept. I'll take the 200,000 to fight Spinks.
And what did that tell you?
He still didn't get the fight.
But what did that tell you? That told you that Norton was very confident and willing to bet on himself, like we just saw Devin Haney do with Kambosa. I think that's the mindset that Fury has, and I think why am I messing these things up? Usyk. I think that's the mindset he has. I like that, and I also think he's smart enough to realize, look, I can't become undisputed unless I fight and defeat Fury. 30% of however many millions it is still more money than I'm going to make fighting anybody else. So let's face it, Usyk has the mindset of the challenger in this fight, and he probably goes into it as the guy that is more hungry with something to prove. So, but Jack, I really do believe this. I really believe this is just Tyson Fury knowing that he has so many options that he can string Usyk along, and maybe he can't get into his head psychologically regarding ring annex, but maybe the business side, he can try to mess with him a little bit. I like every move that Usyk has made. I like Fury to win the fight if they ever fight, but the fact that I'm not sure what kind of shape he'll be in does scare me a little bit. But again, Jack, we need characters. I mean, I've seen a lot of guys, oh, I'm done with Fury. Get out of here. You're the same guys that said that about Mayweather when he gave us nothing but setups, basically, after De La Hoya, and everybody flocked to his fights, no matter how this shakes out. Whatever Fury decides, Usyk will be there, and all the fans will be there because they have us by the you-know-what because we want to see the fight.
But we're at the point where Fury's at the point he has to go through with the Usyk fight. If not at the end of April, then next. He can't have any excuses. He's kind of trapped in a way, into this fight. He can't maneuver. He can't dictate terms. Anthony Joshua's fighting on April 1st. In the UK against Jermaine Franklin. A decent fighter, lost one fight to Dillian White, a disputed decision.
Right.
You would think that Joshua's going to win by a knockout. If Joshua really looks sensational, he's the one guy who could match Fury for earning power, charisma, and the whole bit. And
Fury can fight him, Jack.
And Fury, let's see.
If he looks good, that would be a good replacement because what could Usyk say? Hey, it's a guy you fought twice. I'm going to fight him now.
Joshua's kind of moved on from the Fury thing for the time being. Then after Franklin, he's going to fight a better opponent and then look for like the biggest possible fight, maybe Deontay Wilder. That type of fight. And if those 3 fights Joshua wins in a row, he's going to be every bit as big as Fury, even if Fury beats Usyk.
That's a tall order for him to go 3-0 against those guys.
It'll be a very difficult fight to make because Fury is going to be demanding the lion's share of the purse, and Joshua might figure the heck with it. I don't know what he might do, what he might not. And Joshua, say what you want about him, he's a real fighter. He didn't have to fight Usyk in the first place. We all knew Usyk was a serious threat to Joshua.
And he's a big draw.
He voluntarily fought him. And then he could have had a tune-up before a rematch. He went right back into
he's a real fighter, Jack. I agree. But this is what we're going to get with Fury. As long as he is undefeated, he is going to see himself, and I guess he's right, he's going to see himself as the man that calls the shots, and whether he fights Joe Joyce or Joshua or anybody else, he is going to be the one that is going to come in with the attitude, we're going to do it my way, and this is how it's going to go. And Jack, basically, to a degree, he has them all in kind of a trap. Even Usyk, because Usyk is big on the title and being undisputed. I don't think Fury cares as much about that as Usyk does. I think that works for Usyk in one way. In another way, I don't think that it does. But That's becoming the biggest fight out there, and a lot of it is because of shenanigans that's going back and forth on social media and all the things that's transpired between these guys. And us fans are salivating for it. I mean, every day Fury comes up with something new, and we think we're there. We're not there yet. It's now March 13th. Anyone that believes it can happen in April 29th, that's what, 5.5 weeks away? I don't see it.
No, I agree completely. One thing should be pointed out. Usyk could defeat Fury. Let's say they do fight at the end of April. It's a possibility, okay? And they do, and Usyk defeats Fury. Usyk still might not be the biggest name in the division at any point. Hypothetically, Fury could then go into a fight with Joshua, and the winner of that fight will wind up being bigger than Usyk. It's like what Bert Sugar said, about Ali and Frazier. After Frazier beat him, he said the winner that night was the loser. The
loser was the winner.
So Fury and Joshua, I think, are always going to be bigger than Usyk no matter what.
Jack, isn't that funny? You take a guy like Usyk or Holyfield, they fight everybody. They're always in shape. And every time they fight, you're going to get something of value. Where Ali, Tyson, Mayweather, that wasn't always the case. And even with Fury, but yet Fury is the draw. Usyk is only big with boxing fans. I used to tell my friends that back in the day, say it's 1971 or 72, Muhammad Ali could fight Jean-Pierre Koopman. And across the street, Joe Frazier could fight Jerry Quarry. One fight is a joke. One is a real fight. And we know everybody's going to go see Ali and Koopman.
Well, I'm not sure about Ali and Koopman. Maybe a little bad example.
I think Ali's personality, Jack, just to see him would dwarf it.
Boxing fans still love Jerry Quarry and Joe Frazier. I like a better example. You could have Tyson and Holyfield fighting now. They have a score to settle, and that'll do bigger business than the majority of major boxing matches. Even now, Tyson and Holyfield isn't as insane as it sounds.
Jack, Mac posted, will Fury go down as an all-time great? And I'm glad he put that up there, because I don't know how you feel about this, but I really do believe if and when Fury and Usyk fight, the winner is going to go down among the greats and maybe ranked even a little higher than you and I believe that they will be. But let's face it, they're both undefeated. If Usyk wins, beating Joshua twice, beating Fury when he's undefeated, that gives him some credibility. And then you go back to Fury. If he beats Usyk, he beat Wilder 3 times, and he ended the Klitschko reign, he'll have some notches in his belt to make a good case.
And he got a good win. Usyk had a good win, too, over Tony Bellew, right before the Joshua fights.
Okay.
If Fury is to beat Usyk, and then he beats, let's say, Joe Joyce, and then he beats Anthony Joshua, he's an all-time great. At that point, he's a top 10, and it depends where you want to put him in the top 10.
Who did you say, Jack, Fury or Usyk?
Fury.
Okay.
Legitimately, clearly beats Usyk, then goes on to clearly beat Joe Joyce after, and tops it off by clearly beating Anthony Joshua in succession. The 1, 2, 3, he rates as an all-time great. There's no denying it. There's no getting around it.
So that's another reason why this fight is going to be big, because when you start talking about all-time greats, and that hinges on the winner of this fight, I think that whets the appetite of boxing fans, and I think it's going to do a big number, because both of these guys do have staunch supporters. And again, whoever wins this fight is going to really take a step up on that plateau with the greats, because you can make a case the winner of this fight has a better win than either Klitschko brother, so they would pass them.
I just want to say, if I were Usyk, what I would have done, as much as we admire what he did, 70-30 splits an absolute insult, I would have turned it down. I would have fought my mandatory challenger, Daniel Dubois, in England Frank Warren is Du Bois' promoter. Chances are he comes up with a good bid. The money wouldn't be as big, but he'd fight in England. Usyk will win that fight, and that would be embarrassing Fury there. You know, his name would be super big in England as a result of the Joshua wins, the Du Bois win, and it would have really kept the pressure on Fury.
That's one move. I could see that, but I think somehow Fury would have found a way or would find a way to steal the spotlight.
But Usyk is just sure he's going to beat Fury. He doesn't want to play around. Make the darn fight. I'm better than this guy. I'll beat him. I mean, what confidence.
Jack, we saw that in Manny Pacquiao too with Floyd Mayweather. And for 4 years, Jack, for 4 years, people like myself called Mayweather a coward. And that fight stewed for 4 years. When they got together, it was a huge purse. And Mayweather, to me, won it going away. And I think he knew he could always beat Pacquiao.
They only made the fight because Mayweather and Pacquiao had nowhere else to go.
Nowhere else. You're right.
And Mayweather met Pacquiao at a Miami Heat game, and he invited Pacquiao to his hotel room, and he talked 60-40 split in Mayweather's favor. Mayweather didn't want to give a 60-40 split, but he knew there was no movement. That's the only way he could make the fight. And he told Pacquiao, but I've got to be the A side of the promotion. But
Pacquiao was confident and wanted to fight, and that's how he got it.
Right, but your 40% is a lot more than 30%. Had Mayweather called Pacquiao to his room, said 70-30 in my favor, and I'm the A side, chances are Pacquiao would have said that doesn't quite do it for
But
me.
Floyd knew he couldn't do that because he was messing with somebody that had almost as much juice as he had.
I saw, getting off the heavyweights, I saw the press conferences, Frank, Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia. And I know in the last show I picked Garcia. I said he was going to shut Tank down. I don't feel he'll shut Tank down to the point where he's going to dominate anything like this. I think this is a hard, close fight. Now, I'm wavering a little bit. I got to be honest. I'm wavering a little bit watching tapes of Ryan Garcia. He's so talented, Frank. So talented, but something about his style, his mental makeup bothers me a little bit. And I keep thinking where each guy had to take one tune-up for promotional purposes. Tank took a halfway decent opponent, beat him. Garcia didn't take the tune-up. He didn't fight. He says, I'm just training for Tank. Something about Ryan Garcia's mental state, you kind of don't know where it's at completely.
I can see that.
I'm just not sure.
I like Tank, Jack. I think he's a better fighter. I think Garcia has some things that can give him trouble. And I could, like you like to say, well, he'll be winning early and then he'll get beat. I could see Garcia in the lead and then getting stopped. But Jack, here's another thing. This is a huge fight, but is it really? Who is Ryan Garcia compared to some of the lightweights we saw? We saw Rosario and Chavez fight on HBO. I would take that Rosario and not Chavez to go through both of these guys, and it was an HBO fight. The problem is today we are so starved for big fights and the best fighting the best that when we get Tank Garcia, it looks like mini Ali Frazier.
I love it. I love that you said that, Frank, because watching the press conference, Oscar De La Hoya Garcia's promoter says, we're giving fans the biggest fight that could be made. There's something to I'm paraphrasing him and Steven Espinoza, the head of Showtime, the biggest fight that could be made in boxing. Really, Usyk and Fury's a bigger fight. Beterbiev and Bivol is a bigger fight. Crawford and Spence is a bigger fight that could be made. I'll go a step further. I mean,
Newey and Fulton is this big.
Yeah, I mean, I could say Devin Haney against Shakur Stevenson. That's a real toss-up fight, could be big.
How about Devin Haney and Lomachenko? They're both better known than those guys.
No, this is better than Haney and Lomachenko. Lomachenko's a little long in the tooth. Haney.
I still think because he has the name, though.
But But some fight action over the weekend that took place. I mean, and I got to retract the statement I made last week. You took me to task, and rightfully so, about Tim Tszyu taking on Tony Harrison. I just blew it off. No big deal. Harrison's not a risk. Harrison did pose somewhat of a risk. Tszyu didn't have to have the fight. He could have waited for Jermell Charlo's injury to heal. He wanted to stay active. And it was a risky fight. He did what fighters did. He fought a credible opponent in Tony Harrison who wasn't a walkover. If Tszyu would have had a really bad night, Harrison could have conceivably won. Okay? So, Tim Tszyu deserves his due. But with that said, he is going to fight Jermell Charlo now. To you, Frank, it was a no-brainer before this weekend. Charlo was going to win. You had no hesitation at all. Do you have a little hesitation now, a little doubt after you saw Tszyu stop Harrison in the ninth round?
No. It's a bad matchup for Tszyu. He's not busy enough. He's a little too upright. Charlo's got quicker hands. He can punch with both hands. Tszyu's there to be hit. I thought Tszyu looked really good against Harrison. I really do. I had it exactly as the judges had it. I liked the fact that the judges were all in sync and saw the exact same fight I did, closer in rounds than Steve Farhood had it, but you could tell that it was a methodical showing by Tszyu with the pressure, the body work. He has heavier hands. That was basically the difference. Tony Harrison had really nothing to offer but a jab. As the fight ended, he looked older. He's not sure he's going to fight again. But back to Charlo. Jack, I think Charlo's an outstanding fighter. And I just think psychologically and stylistically, I think it's a bad matchup for Tszyu. Could Tszyu go to distance? Very possibly, but I don't see him winning.
But Tszyu will keep coming and coming and coming. And, gets to the later rounds, it could be pretty uncomfortable for Charlo at that point.
Charlo has some late round stoppages, though, Jack. And he has that killer instinct, that finishing gene, that he is a tiger. And when you push him, you raise his game. And I just think, here's why I think it's a problem for Tszyu. I think that his style, and as you said, he's going to pressure and push the fight. I just think that if it comes down to where they actually start fighting, I think Charlo is a cleaner puncher. I think he's a quicker puncher. And I actually think he has more one-shot power than Tszyu does. And I think that would favor him.
Okay, well, we'll see. But they are going to fight. It is an attractive match, Charlo and Tszyu. We can't get around that. Also, this past weekend, I saw this super middleweight, Diego Pacheco, unbeaten, young fighter. He's handled by the Benavides, camp. David Benavides' dad. And he stopped the fighter, Jack Cullen, in the UK in 4 rounds. He immediately called out Edgar Berlanga, and they could actually make that match because Berlanga's now promoted by Eddie Hearn's Matchroom, and they had Pacheco on their last show. They're not going to match Berlanga with someone like Pacheco. They're looking to baby Berlanga into a fight with Canelo, hopefully get Berlanga, a guy way over the hill who has a name, that'll look good on his record, and then try to sell a Berlanga-Canelo fight. And it's Canelo's pound-for-pound status to me is dipping all the time. I mean, I wouldn't put him 1 or 2 at this point. Crawford's is as well.
When you don't fight.
Yeah.
When you don't fight, exactly. Yeah. And Canelo's going to fight, but nobody takes that fight serious. He's got to fight. He's got to fight Benavides if Benavides beats Plant. We both favor Benavides, but we don't think that we'll see Canelo fight Benavides if he does win.
And as a fighter for Terence Crawford is mandatory, Alex Roca. Something is bothering me about Crawford because he's been so inactive. Any fighter could be had. Any fighter, especially the ones who've been inactive. I get the feeling, just a feeling, Frank, out of nowhere, Crawford's going to suffer a shock loss to someone you know, who we're not going to take seriously going into the fight. And then like, whoa, where did this come from? Kind of like with Buster Douglas and Mike Tyson. That kind of came out of nowhere with the public. It was just another fight that Tyson, I get the feeling that's going to happen to Crawford.
Jack, I don't think that's a reach. I just know this much, though. When it happens, we'll both be on the wrong side because we all picked Crawford. But I could see him getting stale, and he's, 35 years old for a lightweight, and he hasn't had a signature fight yet?
Yeah, welterweight. Yeah, when you're on the downside.
Yeah, welterweight. I'm sorry.
You've been that inactive. It's something that's just bothering me about that. Yeah, Joe's making a point. Joe Bergman, the one flaw I see in Garcia is he stands too straight up. I see it ending on a left hook to the head. Well, I don't know about that. But something about Garcia, he kind of looks a little stiff in his style. And
I think he reaches and lunges too much too, Joe.
Yeah, but we'll see with that.
Jack, you wanted to touch on, before we get to some other things, you wanted to touch on Carlos Takam beating Tony Yoka, who had a hell of an amateur career, hasn't shown the fire as a heavyweight, and that's a good win for Takam, who's been a steady trial horse. He's been in there with everybody, and he'll get a nice payday now.
Yeah.
Get the name.
It's nice to see when a gatekeeper wins a fight. Okay, it doesn't make him a contender, but it's a certain respect that we have for him. Carlos Takam was your typical gatekeeper. He's been in with guys like Anthony Joshua, other names in the heavyweight division, always loses. So he fought Tony Yoka, Olympic champion, won a disputed decision in the Olympics over Joe Joyce, but that's another issue. And Tony Yoka lost his last fight. He was
right. He's what, 9-2, right?
Right. Then for relative inexperience, it was a step up for him really to meet Takam. But he couldn't get over the top. Takam carried the fight to him. It was a split decision, should have been unanimous. Nice win for Takam, but at the same time, the realization has to set in. Tony Yoka's never going to be a legitimate heavyweight contender.
No.
Can they get him some soft wins in the top 10 rating? You can do it with anyone just about.
He'll just never be a threat.
A heavyweight from France who was an Olympic champion. Yeah, you could build him up again, but he's never going to be an elite type fighter. Never a threat to any of the best heavyweights.
Right. Jack, there are three things I want to get to before, if we have time to get to the fantasy fights. This past weekend, Saturday morning, a fighter that we both liked, followed, saw fight, had a lot of respect for, had a terrific career. He passed away. Violence, Richie Cates. 2 weeks before he turned 70 years old, he was a trainer later on in his career. I'm going to tell you a funny story that you probably don't know, and nobody watching us knows this story. But I was talking to our buddy, Mr. Peltz, today. Do you know who Richie Cates was supposed to make his pro debut against in October of '69 at the Blue Horizon?
No.
Could you take a guess? A well-known Philadelphia fighter who was making his pro debut. But they couldn't do it because of the weight.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, no, Bernard Hopkins wasn't around at that time. So
Richie Cates was supposed to make his pro debut against Willie the Worm Monroe. The problem was Cates weighed in at 172, Monroe was 157, and the Pennsylvania Commission scrapped the fight because at that time, no fighter other than a heavyweight could be more than 10 pounds heavier than his opponent, so they had to scrap the fight. Great piece of trivia from Russell Peltz. As far as Cates, what a fighter he was, Jack. He was a boxer puncher. When you look at the names he fought, now he had 2 title shots against Galendez.
I'm looking at his record now, looking down as you're talking. So if you notice my eyes down, I'm just looking at the quality guys that he
look at the guys he beat, Jack.
Len Hutchins was unbeaten in 10 fights, and he beat Len Hutchins in Philadelphia at the Spectrum. Roger Rouse, former light heavyweight contender, fought for the title. He stopped Roger Rouse in Philadelphia. I'm just looking at these names. Don Fulmer at the Spectrum. He beat Don Fulmer, outstanding fighter who could have easily been world middleweight champion.
Look how he smoked Jimmy the Cat Dupree in 1 round.
Jimmy Dupree in 1 round. Yeah. I'm looking at that too. Pierre Foray, who fought Bob Foster for the title twice. He went to South Africa and he beat Fiore down his backyard.
Yep.
And then, we kind of remember, he ended his career with actually winning his his last 5 fights.
Yep.
Normally a fighter loses it, but his last 5 fights, and he beat Jerry Martin in his last fight, Jerry the Bull Martin. But we tend to remember him for the big names he fought. He'd come up short, but he was always competitive. Imagine this, Frank. He was in a bloodbath in Argentina against Victor Galindez in the first of their 2 fights for the WBA light heavyweight title. He got knocked out with 1 second to go in the 15th round.
Yep.
1 second to go. I mean, that's the latest stoppage in world title history. It has to be statistically. And then he lost the decision to Galindez in the rematch. He nearly stopped Matthew Saad Muhammad.
I was at that fight. And remember the Galindez fight, they gave Galindez a lot of time to heal for the cuts. Remember, they stopped the round and they just about repaired his face. But the fight against Saad in 78, Jack, he hit Saad with a right hand that Saad did a pirouette and he fell face forward. And you know the rule, when you fall face forward, you don't get up. But Saad was from another planet and stopped him a round later. But, I mean, think about this. Look, a lot of guys don't win the title because there are other great or near greats there. He had to beat Galindez and Saad, 2 of the better guys of the era. He went into the prison. He fought James Scott. He beat Mary Sutherland, Jerry Celestine. Pat Cuello, I think, fought for the title and maybe even had a version of it. Willie Stallings, who beat a lot of heavyweights, not quite then. Who else? Jeff Lampkin was a hard puncher, and he ended up beating Jerry Martin in the end. It's just a shame, Jack, because there was no exposure then. Richie Cates either had to fight on network TV or locally on Prism, and enough, you just didn't get that exposure. But Richie Cates, if he was around today, I would give him 50-50 against Bivol. I'm not sure about Beaterby. That might be a tough style matchup, but he'd be 50-50 against Bivol.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I mean, we got to put in perspective. As much as you want to respect Richie Cates, very good fighter, but I'm not ready to say he would beat an elite fighter like Bivol, even though Bivol, let's wait to see when his career is over.
Okay, but Jack, and I agree with that, but has Bivol defeated anybody that Richie Cates won beat?
Give him the chance, okay, Bivol, to see what he could do. That's why Teddy Brenner used to say, we can't rate a guy until his career's over.
Totally agree with that, Jack, and I've said that myself.
I don't want to. I said to compare, Richie Cates, if he were fighting in this era, how he would do. Obviously, he would do pretty well. Okay, let
me just make one point, and we'll move off that. I think we've seen the best Bivol. Bivol is always going to rank higher than a guy like Richie Cates because he won the title. But assuming we've seen the best Bivol, and we look back at the guys that Bivol has defeated, could we agree that Richie Cates would probably be favored over those guys?
Well, I mean, no, he wouldn't have been favored over Canelo.
Okay.
Going into Canelo's fight with Bivol, Canelo would have been favored.
In today's world, he wouldn't be because Canelo's name is Canelo. But based on the fight that we saw, if you go by what they brought to the ring, I can make a case
that's a slippery
that he might be.
Going over.
But okay.
we're here to honor Richie Cates, because then I could make a case to say, well, who would Cates have not beaten who Bob Foster defended his title against? I could start making that argument, and I could diminish.
And I like that argument. But I make that argument for this, Jack. Here's why I make the argument. If I believe that Cates is no worse than even money against everybody Bivol has defeated, including Canelo. So if I see him that way, then if I put him in there with Bivol, he has as much of a chance to do as good as they did or better. That's all I'm saying. I would probably pick Bivol to beat him, but I just think that based on the opposition he fought, I can make a case that Bivol never fought anybody as good as him. Look, there's a fight coming up that I'm very excited about that we're going to start talking about with Stephen Fulton and Inouye.
Let me tell you, mention who Bivol is beaten. Our producer Mac, Joe Smith is his guy.
Joe Smith is not beating Richie Cates.
Well, if you ask Mac would pick Smith by a knockout. But
if I ask you, who are you going to pick?
I don't. I'm here to praise, Richie Cates. He had a outstanding career. He only lost to the best. Okay, to go to Argentina, 2 tough fights with Galindez. You can make it
30 rounds of Galindez tells me he lives with anybody out there today.
You can make an argument he was deprived, that he was maybe robbed in a sense of becoming the world light heavyweight champion when Galindez had that cut and they had that extra delay.
And think how that changes everything.
Had that fight taken place in Philadelphia, for example, or anywhere
Cates is the winner.
United States, there's a good chance Cates would have been declared the winner. Or if Galindez wasn't the A side, the big name, and they were considered of the same status, chances are Cates would have been declared the winner and the new champion in their first fight.
Isn't that amazing, though, Jack? How one decision changes everything? Because if Richie Cates has a win over Galindez, we look at his career completely different.
We do.
All right. So,
look at him as a perennial contender. We look at him,
think if Jerry Quarry would have won the title, we look at him much different too. But look who was there. Same thing. All right, Richie Cates, you were a real fighter, a nice guy. Rest in peace. You will not be forgotten. All right, let's get to business number 2. Today is March 13th, 2023. Exactly 60 years ago, Cassius Clay, a.k.a. Muhammad Ali, fought his first main event at Madison Square Garden against Doug Jones. 10-round fight. There was a newspaper blackout at that time. Clay was mad he wasn't getting enough attention. I think the Garden was close to being sold out that night. Jack, like all great fighters, sometimes they get a gift on the way up. I didn't see the fight live. You didn't see the fight live, but I've watched it countless times on video. And I don't see the controversy. I think Jones won a solid 3 rounds. I think him being quick, 186 pounds. I've always said smaller, quick guys bother Ali more than big bruisers. Ali at that time only had 17 or 18 fights. Jones capitalized on him pulling back with his hands down. How do you see the fight?
Yeah, that was only 2 fights before Ali won the title from Sonny Liston.
He fought Cooper, then Liston.
Right after. It's funny what you mentioned about the Garden being sold out. There was a newspaper strike, and they still sold the Garden out, which is kind of amazing to get word out. And Ali had started before then. Cassius Clay was his name at the time. So let's call him Cassius Clay because that was his name at the time. Clay had made a lot of predictions at that time. The round he was going to stop someone in. But for Doug Jones, he kept changing his mind. On the round, and there was confusion, and he didn't know what to do. He was confusing himself, Clay. Let me call him Ali. I meant his name was Clay at the time. I don't want someone might get offended, with the revisionist thinking. So Angelo Dundee then took some tape with Ali
his mouth.
taped his mouth, and they walked in for all the newspaper guys like he couldn't talk to make a prediction, and everyone had to laugh. I'm like you, Frank. I've said this before. The only proper way to really score a fight, the best way, is have no idea what happened, and score it that way. Once you know what happened, you're kind of prejudiced in a way because you know a knockout isn't going to take place. You know a knockdown isn't going to take place. If you know everyone scored the 7th round for fighter A, you're not going to score it for fighter B. But with that said, I scored the Ali Doug Jones fight 6 rounds to 4 for Ali, that particular fight.
Which is interesting.
2 judges had it 5-4-1, and 1 judge had
7-3.
8-4-1. Ali,
or 8-1-1.
Escaped, with his unbeaten record. Imagine if the decision had went to Jones.
Yes.
How would that would have affected boxing history, even if Ali would have fought Cooper next and then beaten Liston. You want to know why? Because the fight of the century against Joe Frazier wouldn't have quite been built.
No, everything would have been different.
Maybe not as much as different as we think, but it wouldn't have been the same. In that case, Ali and Frazier, it was important for them to go into the fight of the century unbeaten. And
Jack, that's exactly it. Look at Mayweather's career. If he doesn't get the decision against Castillo the first time, and I clearly thought he lost, that changes history. There's a lot of fights like that to change history. But it's funny, Ali did make 2 predictions on Jones, a 6 round and a 4 round, and after the fight, he said, well, I said 6 and I said 4. It went 10. He said, so I got it right. Funny story, Jack. I actually have the program from that fight. I have the program from that fight. It was $1, signed Cassius Clay. I had him sign it. And obviously, I didn't go to the fight. I met a guy who was a retired New York cop at the Trump Plaza in 1989, I believe. I went to watch Tyson train for Carl the Truth Williams. And I got talking to this man there, Frank McGowan from New York. Jack, we hit it off so good. He says, Frank, he goes, I want your address. He goes, I have something for you. He goes, I was at the fight that night. He goes, I've enjoyed talking to boxing with you so much. I want you to have this. He sent it to me in the mail. This was in 89. And my friend Davis Miller got Ali to sign it, Cassius Clay, in 1991 at the Ali Frazier dinner. So that's probably my most cherished piece of memorabilia, because there's a million Muhammad Ali programs out there. How many of them out there are Cassius Clay? He only fought Cassius Clay 3 years, and I have it signed Cassius Clay. So that's probably my most cherished piece of memorabilia. Nice. Also, Jack, the reason why I wanted us to touch on this fight, as we said earlier, there's a lot of debate about that fight. And a lot of people forget at that time, a lot of people thought Ali was a nut. They didn't think he was that good. They thought he was funny. Nobody was calling him a great fighter. So that does change the perception then compared to now. Now we know he's one of the all-time greats. Back then, nobody knew it. But people always talk about that fight and who won. What are some of the fights to you that they just never die and the decision is always argued about? I would say that as long as I follow boxing, almost 56 years, I think the Hagler-Leonard decision is probably, to this day, 20-some years, almost 30 years later, is still the most hotly debated decision that I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Leonard deserved a decision, as you did, Frank. But this is what gets me mad, when people say a certain fighter was robbed. They use that term so loosely in a close fight. Even if you think Hagler won the fight, even if you gave Hagler the benefit of the doubt in just about all the close rounds, and there were a number of close rounds, and you thought Hagler won 7 rounds to 5, for argument's sake, don't tell me he was robbed. Okay, don't tell me you couldn't see the logic behind Leonard getting the decision. I'll tell you one fight that did bother me an awful lot. We remember the second Jerry Quarry, Joe Frazier fight, June 17th, 1974 at Madison Square Garden. Well, I was at the Garden, and it was a doubleheader on a split screen from Albuquerque. Bob Foster was defending
Umada.
Jorge Ahumada. Ahumada won 11 of the 15 rounds. He absolutely won that fight. It wasn't close, and they called it a draw.
The draw, right.
Ahumada was deprived of being the world light heavyweight champion. We talked a little while ago, well, imagine had Richie Cates had fate been a little kinder to him and he was a world champion. In reality, Cates, you could debate whether they should have stopped this fight with Galindez or not. That's not clear cut at all. But what was clear cut was Ahumada beat Foster. And, years later, I interviewed Foster to do a story on him. And Foster told me he thought Ahumada won the fight. He added in, he said, look, if I was in my prime, it wouldn't have been a contest. I would have destroyed Ahumada. But he said, I have to admit, I think Ahumada did beat me that night. So there you go. There you go. I mean, and no one talks about that fight. I'll tell you one fight that was hotly contested that I think you're going to bring up. I bet it's on your list. James Toney and Dave Tiberi.
See, Jack, that's a little different, though, than what I'm talking about. You were talking about robberies. I'm talking, I meant more or less fights that were 60-40, where some people just can't let go that one guy lost. We're like the Hagler fight. Hagler fans just can't accept it. Another fight would be, and it fits into what you said, wasn't a robbery, but maybe he didn't get the decision. Ali Norton 3. A lot of people think that Norton won the fight, but was he robbed?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
No, I was at Yankee Stadium.
I was there that night too.
And I scored at 8-7 Norton, but there's a certain feeling we have at the end of the fight. At the end of 15 rounds, if you asked me who won the fight, who do I really think won the fight, I would have thrown my hands up. I don't know. This fight could go either way. This is like a coin flip type fight. That's what it was. It was a coin flip type decision. Okay, I had Norton eking it out. I very easily could have had Ali eking the fight out as well. But it wasn't a robbery, It had to be a big letdown for Norton. I don't get what people say Norton beat Ali 3 times. Where did they get that from?
Ali clearly won the second fight.
It was a close fight, the second fight. I thought Ali deserved the decision, but even in that fight, you could make a case for Norton perhaps edging it out too, as well. It was close, it was a split decision, as I recall, the second fight. But sometimes, Frank, as time goes by, generations look at things differently and they forget bad decisions, like Billy Graham and Kid Gavilan. Billy Graham was always called the uncrowned champion because reportedly he was robbed against Kid Gavilan, deserved the decision, and there was some type of fix. But how do you distinguish between robbery in close fight just because it's an opinion on a close fight?
That's the whole, Jack. That's why I brought this up. If you look at the Ali Norton fight, I was there at Yankee Stadium, and I remember everybody around me thought it came down to the last round, and you could make that the case for the rematch that if Ali didn't win the last round against Norton in their 73 rematch, maybe Norton does get that decision. But see, that's one of them, Jack. Another one. Some people think Ken Norton beat Holmes. How about Golovkin and Canelo, the first fight? People still argue about that fight.
Yeah, but very few people feel Canelo won the first fight. Some might feel a draw was okay. That comes under the category, we know Golovkin probably should have gotten the decision.
I had him winning, no doubt.
He should have gotten the decision, and you look to sometimes justify a decision for a certain guy. Chavez and Pernell Whitaker. Does that come under robbery? Can you make any type of case for Chavez deserving?
I think that's a robbery, Jack, because I can't make any case for Chavez. So to me, that would go as a robbery because the wrong guy didn't get his hand raised.
Trinidad De La Hoya, robbery or not? I can't say it's a robbery. Harold Letterman, HBO's unofficial scorer, had it a draw. And I thought a draw would have been fair. Okay.
I had it 7-5 the night of the fight, Jack. Am I going to call that a robbery? That might be too close to call robbery. All I know is this. After 9 rounds, I had it 7-2 for De La Hoya.
The second Mosley De La Hoya fight.
I scored that for De La Hoya.
I was at ringside in Vegas. I had it scored a draw. And Mosley gets the decision, and most people feel Oscar was, they used the term he was wrapped. Whitaker De La Hoya. I was in Vegas for that. I had Oscar winning.
I had Oscar winning it by a point.
Yeah.
How about De La Hoya Corte?
People feel Whitaker was robbed. They used the term when he was robbed against Oscar.
I think it was too close to be a robbery.
Yeah.
I had Oscar edging that fight out.
Young and Ali. I had Muhammad Ali edging Jimmy Young because Jimmy Young kept sticking his head through the ropes. A lot of people thought that was a robbery or not.
I scored that fight, I believe, 7-6-2 for Young. I thought that, and I've said this, and I'll take it to my grave. I think that's the one fight that Ali got that I'm not sure he won that fight. He probably lost. But I didn't penalize Young so much for ducking out of the ring. I know what it looks like, but Ali did absolutely nothing in that fight.
But it wasn't a robbery. I mean, you could say Young won the fight, but it wasn't a robbery. Your favorite fighter, Floyd Mayweather Jr. against Jose Luis Castillo, the first fight.
Jack, I know you're not going to believe this because I'm not the biggest Mayweather fan. But when he fought Castillo the first time, I was a Mayweather fan. And I said to my wife at that time, when I was married, we watched that fight on HBO. She has no interest in boxing. And because of the way it was going and the noise I was making and how I carried on, she got into it the last 4 rounds. When the fight ended, I said to her, I said, you know what? I said, this is going to really be interesting because Mayweather is HBO's guy. He doesn't think he won the fight. None of the commentators think he won the fight. I have him losing by 4 points. And if his name was Merriweather, I don't think he would get the decision. But because he's Mayweather and he's the money train down the road, I think he's going to get it. So I had Castillo winning that fight. I do think that was kind of a robbery.
I had it scored a draw, 114-114. And my feeling was it could go either way. I didn't like that the judges had it, I think, all 115, 111, all of them 8 rounds to 4 for Mayweather.
Which is exactly how Letterman had it, only the other way.
Right. I thought that was extreme. But then again, one of our friends who we both respect, who's really active on social media, he's an author. He has a great podcast with Michael Olajide Jr., Ben Dowdy. He thought, Mayweather clearly won the fight. And
I've seen where he said that.
Yeah. So you never know.
You know what's funny, Jack? He used to do a thing where he would play a fight live and score it, a past fight. And I remember he did Hagler Leonard about 2 years ago. And I was going back and forth with him, and we both couldn't see the outrage for Hagler because I think we had Leonard winning 8-4. But yeah, look, that's another one of those fights. There's a bunch of them. Some people think that Carl Williams and Tim Witherspoon beat Larry Holmes. I don't. I think Holmes pulled them both out at the end. I've argued with Tim Witherspoon himself. He goes, he brings up, well, everybody thought I won. I said, well, I didn't have you winning. I thought that he did more than you down the stretch. But that's another one that's debated by everybody. How about Floyd Patterson and Jerry Quarry, the rematch?
Yeah,
another one.
For the draw, more the Patterson-Jimmy Ellis fight. You know what's strange? I watched that fight when I was a kid, and I had Patterson winning 10 rounds to 5. Years later, and Jimmy Ellis was my favorite fighter. You know, if you ask me my favorite fight of all time, and it actually was Jimmy Ellis. He was a fighter of my youth. I love Jimmy
I didn't
Ellis.
know that. That's pretty cool because I was a big fan of Ellis also.
Right. So years later, as a Jimmy Ellis fan, I'm watching the fight over to write a story about it, to rescore it once again, decades later.
You had it a draw.
Because I remember the reporters at the fight from New York. There were like 4 reporters. They all scored it for Ellis, and I couldn't see it. You know, including Milton Gross, the great columnist. He had Ellis winning, you know, from ringside. So I watched it on YouTube. 1 round didn't come out, so I got to score 14 of the 15 rounds.
And how'd you have it?
Patterson 8 rounds to 6 on a rewatch. So that means Patterson, and it wasn't the 15th round because I remember Ellis clearly won that round. So either Patterson would have won 8 rounds to 7 and 9 rounds to 6 in my rewatch. So, you know, I disagreed with the decision.
Well, Harold Vallon was the referee and the only judge, right? Remember the fight ended and he raised Ellis's hand?
9-6, but wasn't Harold Vallon the same one who had to act as a judge in New Jersey who gave the decision for Chuck Wepner over Ernie Terrell? And I heard that was one of the worst decisions.
Yes, I've heard that also. Jack, I had Ellis winning the fight, but only because I thought Patterson landed the cleaner punches, just not enough of them. But to wrap it up, Jack, here's the last topic. It's 2 years today that the great Marvin Hagler passed away at age 66. Can you believe that Marvin Hagler is no longer with us? Just doesn't seem right.
Yeah, Hagler's one of these great champions whose legacy has grown in time. You never know. Certain legacies kind of fade out a little in time, certain great champions. We don't remember them the way we should. Hagler wasn't considered a charismatic champion until he beat Tommy Hearns, okay? Only towards the end of his career, he developed this tremendous charisma. If Hagler were fighting today, he would be in the driver's seat.
Oh, what a star he would be.
Oh, right. Like, could you imagine him and Leonard were young guys again, and they had to negotiate for a fight? Leonard might have to go 50-50 with Hagler if Hagler wouldn't budge. Hagler say, I'm not budging at all. I'll fight other guys. The heck with him. You know, let him fight other guys.
I think it all depends on how everything played out. But, I mean, I guess that's plausible.
55-45 Sugar Ray. Just a little tweak to Leonard, and Hagler would take it. And I don't think he would have to bow down in the
Jack, you know what's amazing? You know what's funny, too, if you think about it? Of the 4 kings, Leonard, Duran, Hearns, and Hagler, Hagler was the only one of the 4 that got out at the right time, and he took the least amount of punishment, and yet he passed first.
I had a friend who passed away, who I don't think I should mention his name because it was a private phone conversation, who was very close with Marvin Hagler on a personal level. And he called Hagler the morning after Leonard got knocked out by Hector Camacho, Leonard's last career fight. And he said him and Hagler had a good laugh over the whole thing. Hagler was amused. So there's no love lost in that sense. Maybe in later years, Hagler softened a little bit as time went by, because I remember at the Hall of Fame in Tanastota, they won the stage. And when he had to leave, he kind of patted Leonard to say, I'll see you, you know, that he had to go. So they were like outwardly cordial, but there was always that edge there. It was closer to Ali Frazier from Hagler's viewpoint than there being complete peace.
Jack, and to this day, do we even know for sure how he died?
No.
I'm not sure either. And we're not going to go down there, but nobody talks about it. But I just know this much. It just doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like it's been 2 years, but he had a great life. He was a wealthy man when he died, and until he died, he had all of his faculties. He looked good. He had money. He went to Italy. He acted for a while, came back. What an all-time great he was. Boy, do we miss him. Jack, it's been fun. Can't wait to do it next week. And you brought up a good topic for us. What we'll do, Jack, looking back at fighters. How about we do this? We kick it around. Some guys' legacies get better as we get away from them. Some guys shrink a little bit.
Great topic, Frank. And also with our fantasy fights, we'll make up some of the lost ground, hopefully.
Right. We'll get to that next week. Thanks, Jack. Good time. Thanks for watching, everybody.